Hello, everyone, and welcome to another monthly talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. This is our other talk that we do every third Sunday of the month for those who cannot make it at our usual scheduled time at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. We are meeting at this time, 10:30-ish a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So, for those of you who have made it, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you. And for those who are watching on the replay, we love having you here as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, so I guess we got to do our little YouTube spiel. We'll try to keep it brief since we have to do it twice today.
All right, YouTube spiel. If you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. If for some reason you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, and God only knows why you would not do that.
Yeah, why is that?
Let me invite you to subscribe. It's the little button right down over here somewhere. If you click it, you will be subscribed to us and wonderful things will happen. It is well known that miraculous events occur when you subscribe to this channel. Also, hit the little bell so that you can be notified when we put new content up. And we would love it if you would like our video. We are hanging at 906 subscribers as of this morning. People come, people go, so it's been hanging around there. But
So
that means it's almost to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, not so that we can monetize our channel, but so we can demonetize our channel and get the ads off that YouTube is forcing on people when they come and watch our stuff.
God willing.
We don't already make enough money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
because that's not how we want to make our profits, that's for sure.
No, that's definitely not how we want to make any profit at all, especially not hyping some of these places that advertise on our channel. Who shall remain nameless.
So, do we have anything else we need to add? Announcements?
If you are watching this, you will benefit from watching the video that we're going to do it in the evening, because they will kind of connect. You don't have to join both. You don't have to join either, but it would be great if you watch them. And we would love, absolutely love, for you to make a comment. I was so delighted this morning. I woke up, and the first thing I do when I wake up is, start my coffee and then check to see if I have to answer comments for the YouTube channel. And there was somebody who commented on the videos that we did, the two-part series that we did on human adulthood and the Enneagram of human adulthood. And he was like, first one was straightforward. The second one was hard to understand. You need to say more. And I was able to say to him, just as it happens, welcome back.
It was actually me.
That was you?
Awesome. Yay.
Yes.
Here you go, kiddo. Good. Yes, we would love more comments.
Yes.
All right. So, let's get started, shall we?
All right.
Yeah, so we are going to be delving into a specific part of the Enneagram today. We're going to be talking about the icky part of, the path to human adulthood, where the rubber meets the road, all of the stuff involved in that little chunk of the journey.
Yes, say more about that.
Well, this is the part where people start to get really uncomfortable because they are following through on their commitment to putting the work in to become an adult, mature human being, to climb out of immaturity, basically. And that is certainly not an easy thing to do. There's so much fighting against you when you decide to take that on and follow through on it, because you're coming up against all the things that have kept you comfortable or that have felt like home for most of your life up until that point. You know, all your less than completely helpful coping skills, your habituations, your trauma responses, your chronic physical tension, chronic anxiety, all of those things that have become home to you over the course of a lifetime that suddenly you decided don't serve you anymore. What do you do about that? So we're going to be discussing that specifically. There's no need to go into the story of how those things came into being. As we'll find, that's like wandering around in a labyrinth for years. The only way to get out of that labyrinth is to consider the present moment the open door.
I like that. I'm probably going to steal that one from you.
Yeah, we can talk more about that too.
Yep. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and bring up the Enneagram from part 2 of the Enneagram of Human Adulthood so that we can refresh our memories. Some of you may not have ever seen this, but
we did this in March of last year, so 2021 March.
Yeah, and I will link those 2 talks at the end of this video and in the description below so people can find them.
Oh, okay. So this is the one from last week. Yes.
Yeah, this is the one from the last week because this is the more refined one. The one from the first week, it was just the basics. And today we are going to look specifically at point 3 through point 6. This is
yeah, I don't even think this is the one from last week. This goes
no, this is not the one from last week. This is the one
right.
from the second of the 2 talks.
Got it.
Human Adulthood. So, in brief, there is this idea of human adulthood. That's at the 0-9 point. At point 1, you encounter this idea personally in some way or another. And it is important enough to you that you want to know things about it. So at point 1, you're gathering information. It's always a preparation point. And you look at that and you go, what is this human adulthood? I thought that you just grew up. And then you go out and you read various texts and you find out that no, you don't grow up. The sad fact is that without intervention in the world as it exists today, we stop maturing somewhere around puberty. And you can test this for yourself and you look inside and see if your emotional responses to things are pretty much the same as they were when you were 12, 13. Look at other people and notice that their responses to the world tend to be that of an adolescent. Look at the world itself. I mean, what the hell is Vladimir Putin and his Russian invasion other than a schoolyard bully with a nuclear arsenal? If you think about his behavior, it's just like a schoolyard bully. You know, I want this, you have to give it to me, give me your lunch money. If anybody tries to interfere with this, they're going to be sorry, I'm going to hurt them. So we're dealing with a human population that ceases its evolution, its personal evolution, at around puberty. There's all sorts of models we could use to talk about the Leary 8-circuit model works pretty well here, various others, but I just want to call it what it is. You stop maturing unless there is intentional work. And that's what happens here at 1. You discover that you've stopped maturing. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's a little shocking to go, oh, when somebody says to you, take a look at this, is there any difference between what you're doing now and what you were doing when you were 12? And if the only answer is, yeah, I'm better at it now, as opposed to I can choose differently now, then you may have this problem. People don't want to hear this. This is not going to be a popular talk because it will upset people. Now, point 2, finding the specific practices of the work and encountering the school. And even more importantly, encountering human adults. In the description, I put up a quote from some crazy dude that says, children cannot teach children how to be adults. And this is one of the fundamental truths of the world. In order to move into a state of objective adulthood, you need a catalyst. You need to experience other people who have achieved this state, who are willing to mentor you. This is not an advertisement for the school because I'm a big kid at heart, so don't worry about that. But that's necessary. You have to encounter that somehow. Otherwise, you go off in all sorts of weird directions. These days, the hucksters and con artists in the spiritual marketplace rely on the fact that you have not encountered any human adults, and they masquerade as a human adult to disastrous consequences most of the time.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to touch on each of these and then go back to the most important ones. The third is the first conscious shock. And I call this the sacrifice of the sand grain. So pearls are formed by a little bit of sand getting into the mantle of the oyster and providing an irritant. The oyster reacts by covering that irritant with beautiful, lustrous material. And the more beautiful the pearl, probably the more painful the irritant. So every real pearl, even the cultured pearls, they use a little ball of wax instead of a sand grain, but even cultured pearls are created through the suffering of the oyster. And we are in the place where we have to consciously, willingly insert a bit of sand into our own mantle to provide the irritant by which we can grow, by which we can form the pearl.
Because at the very least, it's inconvenient to change.
Yeah, well, we say that so that we don't scare people off. The truth is, it is terrifying to change. To do this kind of change is utterly terrifying. And most people don't want to do it.
I've said this before, but I often use a metaphor that it's like you're at, a rift, and the only way across it is to cross the most rickety, shitty rope bridge you've ever seen in your life. And all of the wooden slats across it are falling apart, and any step you take could potentially, end your ego, perhaps, but you really want to get to the other side.
And then your teacher comes up and sets one side of the bridge on fire.
Yeah, so what do? I mean, there's only one way across.
Yeah.
You either go or you don't. You either change or you don't. How bad do you want it?
Yeah, or does that abyss look comfortable?
There's a metaphor for you.
Yeah. So that's the first conscious shock. That gets us to 4. Observing each eye of the personality. This is intense self-observation. This is seeing how your various eyes are fragmented within yourself. That at any given moment, one little sub-personality is going to be up and acting in the world, and in the next moment, it's going to be someone totally different, each of which has your name. So you walk into work and something pisses you off and you switch to the pissed off you. And when you're done being pissed off, you're not even sure how you got there. After doing enough of this work, after really doing very, very intense self-observation for a while, you finally end up crossing the equator. And this is where self-remembering comes in. You move from self-observation to self-remembering. Point 5 is the point of most attention and the point of most work. This is where the chrysalis is built and moved through. Gurdjieff called it building the magnetic center. I think that that's a terrible term for it, but that will, it'll have to do for the moment. By the way, we are going to be talking about the 7 types of human according to Gurdjieff at our evening talk, and it's going to completely dovetail into this. So watch that talk if you can, if we haven't bored you to tears by this point. So if we have done enough work to create the magnetic center, for lack of a better term, we can make the second conscious shock. And as we say, the first conscious shock at 3 is done with your own will, your own intention. The second conscious shock has to be done with surrender, with allowing, with accepting grace. You can't do this on your own. Something has to come in from the outside to help you. Whatever your understanding of what that is, it's fine. Doesn't matter. We don't need to name it, but it has to happen here. You can't. Will is the thing that comes in from the outside at 3. Grace is the thing that comes in from the outside at 6. The practice here is self-witnessing. And this, the Prophet Muhammad said, you must die before you die. And that's what this talks about, because this is, in a very real sense, a death. And it's the death that you need, not the death that you want, or the death that you're afraid of.
Yes, and I want to amend my metaphor by saying, you know, if you don't make it, it's not ego death, but it's the death of the process. You've begun to destroy everything that you built to that point, and you're going to have to start all over. So what we want here is to get across that bridge, because it can be done, and allow those insecurities that you couldn't make it to die.
Yes. Yeah, this is, there are 2 of the sayings of Muhammad that I think are connected here, even though they were given at different times. The first one is, man is asleep and he will not wake up until death. And then the second is, die before you die. Sorry, my digital mistress is informing me about things I have to do later.
There's a reminder for much talk.
Thank you. I forgot to turn the volume down on it.
I know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So, Muhammad sayings.
Yeah, sayings of Muhammad, always good. People don't realize how good of things he said. that help you on the path, but we will remind you. So at point 7, we come to actually being able to experience the adult state and to work with it. At this point, 7 returns to 1. This is the cycle. 7 goes to 1. That's your octave: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. So 7 completes the octave, but the Enneagram continues. At point 8, you get acting from the adult state. What is it like to be an adult in this world? Terrifying comes to mind occasionally. Seriously, when you look at the fact that, like the leaders of your country are all children, and their behavior makes more sense looking at play yard dynamics than it does looking at running a country. It's a kind of horrifying situation, but you get to act from the adult state. And that brings us back to the third conscious shock, which is living the life of human adulthood. Though you're going to probably cycle through this a couple of times before you get it exactly right. Does that all make sense so far?
Yeah, do we have any questions so far?
Yes, please ask questions.
Or unmute or type in the chat box real quick. But I want to offer everyone the opportunity to speak up if they'd like to.
I have perhaps it's not a well-formulated question, but
That's all right, go for it.
I'm reminded of the quote from Gurdjieff: "The last thing that a man will sacrifice is his suffering."
Yep.
Yeah, that's
And
relevant
so,
here.
exactly. And so there's the sacrifice of the sand grain. And I'm wondering how you would relate that to the act of actually sacrificing one's suffering, how one does that, what it looks like.
Yeah.
Within this Enneagram.
That's actually a very good question. The sacrifice of the sand grain is conscious suffering, being awake through the experience of suffering in the actual meaning of the word. Suffering doesn't mean being in pain. Suffering means to allow. Think, suffer the little children to come unto me. Right? We don't use it in that way anymore, but it means to allow. So you have to allow the experience, even if the experience is painful. And you have to do it consciously. You have to stay awake through it. And if you do, you succeed. If you don't, you recycle. And one of the most terrible things to have happen is to have this octave break down. And it will either break down at 3 or 6 usually. Break down anywhere, but those are the most likely points. If the octave breaks down, if you do not complete the octave do to do, then you lose all of the energy that you put into doing this, and you increase your inertia. So the next time you try, it's harder. So there's an actual consequence to this. And that consequence begins at 3, where you are consciously allowing suffering. For some reason, they translated what Gurdjieff said into intentional suffering and conscious work, but that is exactly backwards. It should be conscious suffering and intentional work. And is this making sense, or am I just blathering off into a weird direction for you?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that you're giving us here.
Good.
I think we have some ways to expand on that via the comments that we're getting, the questions we're
Go
getting
for it.
in the chat. I will get to all of them, but I just want to touch on first. Aaron asks, could it be thought of as sacrificing the sleeping state?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of how I understood it as I was reviewing this content in preparation for today. It's kind of like you're, as I said, you're sacrificing your insecurities, like all of those things that you kind of held on to as ways that you represent yourself and understand yourself. Suddenly, all of that push pull that you've been kind of deliberately taking on as a way to break all of those habituations, all of that from all the insecurities and the ways that you understand yourself so far, and also the this kind of like strain that you're putting on yourself to change. When you surrender, it's as if all of that is released into ease.
Yeah. And that's what gives you the energy to do this process. And that's why we're going to talk now just about from 3 to 6.
Yes.
We are going
Yes.
to use the metaphor of the insect, the metaphor of the butterfly.
So tying to that,
Yeah.
sorry, finish your thought. Just want to get to the other questions too.
Okay,
before we
go
move on.
into the other questions. I don't want to run off.
Yeah. So BB asks, she says she's still struggling with points 3 and 6, will and grace, but she feels that might need to wait to another talk. Do you feel like we could just quickly?
Yeah, we have gone over that a lot, and BB,
Yeah.
you and I are going to be talking personally soon. So write that question down, and I will explain it until you get it.
That's always a nice bonus when you guys get to talk one-on-one. Yeah. Or, any of us to answer questions like that. And you can always, other people can follow up in the comments as well. All right. So that leaves Nancy, who says, is 9/0 becoming able to raise children to adulthood?
That's a damn good question. And
it's a good question.
My answer is yes.
I would say yes.
Yeah, at 9/0, you have the ability to catalyze, whether you use it or not.
Yeah. At the same time, though, coming into full adulthood is something that you also have to take personal responsibility for, meaning no one can do that for you. They can only guide you so far. So we need to keep that in mind as well. Hopefully we can set our children on the right path so that this is easier to do, and they've been offered the skills and tools to be able to do it with greater ease and confidence. But at the end of the day, we all have to do our own work.
Yeah, and without a proper guide, it's hard to do the work. For instance, in Islam, there is this concept called sunnah. And sunnah means basically what the prophet did. And so we look at how he behaved in the world as an example of human adulthood. The problem is that he's dead, and everybody gets to interpret it whatever way that they wanted to. There used to be imams in the real sense that would help you to understand, because they also spoke from a place of human adulthood. But they're all gone too. It creates a problem. But there is that example that can be done by anybody. It's why Noor and I are very careful in our behavior, because it needs to be an example of what this is.
Yeah. And, as a younger person still, that can be a little crazy making, but I know that it's a responsibility that I have consented to carry.
Yeah, as an older person, I can tell you that it will remain crazy making.
So there you go, everyone. I mean, the sacrifice of the sand grain is ongoing.
So do we have any more questions?
Nope,
Okay,
not in the chat anyway.
good.
All right.
I have just one more
Go for it.
Sure.
thought that comes to mind in relation to the ongoing sacrifice of the sand grain. And I'm reminded of Gurdjieff's sacrifice of his hypnotic and telepathic powers
Exactly.
as a constant external reminding force
Yeah. If and
to
when
return him to that state of self-remembering.
yeah, if and when you listen to the second one of these things that we did, we covered that kind of extensively. The sacrifice that God made of Lucifer, and the sacrifice that Gurdjieff made of hypnosis. Very important point at this, and it gives you something that will constantly keep you awake, because the universe is designed to put you to sleep. It is so easy to fall asleep, and you need that irritant. So the metaphor that we want to use today, and this is the meat of this talk. We always do the meat towards the end of the talk, not the beginning, so that the people who can only watch for 5 minutes are already gone. Caterpillar to butterfly. At point 3, point 1 and 2, you're a caterpillar. You're feeding yourself. Point 3 is where the caterpillar splits its skin and forms a chrysalis, whether they do it inside a cocoon or not. You know what happens to a caterpillar in a chrysalis, right? They literally turn into liquid. They liquefy themselves. That is point 4. The hard work of breaking down everything that you have built up. And in order to do that, you have to have gained enough energy at 1 and 2. And you have to be in touch with the morphic field of caterpillars everywhere. Something has to instruct breaking down into organic goo and then rebuilding oneself from that. And there is an intelligence that does that, whether you want to think of it as genetic intelligence or morphogenetic intelligence, I don't care. But there's an intelligence that does that. This point 4 is the breaking down process. You are turning yourself into goo. Point 5 is building the butterfly through the goo. And point 6 is breaking free of the chrysalis. Each step is harder than the next, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think that allows us to touch into Nancy's question real quick.
Yes, please.
He asks, do people need slack while they're building themselves into adults?
That's a hard question. The answer is yes and no.
That's how I feel about it too. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's nice to give yourself a little forgiveness for being imperfect or whatever it is. That's
Great. Yeah.
a little of that. And at the same time, you cannot stop this process once it's started. If you give yourself too much slack, you stop the process.
Yeah.
And the thing is, between point 3 and point 6, you are running on your internal energy. You are running on the energy that you have built up to do this process, and you're not getting any energy from the outside.
Yep.
So if you have not eaten enough milkweed leaf, by the point you do the chrysalis, you don't have enough physical, biological energy to transform yourself. So 1 and 2 demands that you get the energy. From 3 to 6, you're using this up. You use up a lot of it at 4. When you get to 5, you don't have as much energy. You have one way, if you are a chrysalis, to get your energy, and that is by efficiently breathing. Chrysalises have tiny little holes through which they can get oxygen. And so you cannot sloppily use your energy. You have to be very efficient at this point because you're rebuilding yourself in a very literal sense. At 5, this is where the qualities of an adult human being are created. And we have talked about this at length, but I am going to belabor the point with you. And it's going to look like you develop the ability to foreshadow, the ability to understand the consequences of your actions and behavior in an objective sense. It's not seeing into the future, but it is extrapolating. Oh, I want to do this. If I do this, I will create the circumstances that will bring this about. Or I want to do this right now. Right now. But if I do, then all of this other stuff falls apart. Children demand immediate gratification. Adults have the capability of withholding gratification until the appropriate moment. And the ability to foreshadow is absolutely necessary to that. Adult human beings can extrapolate the consequences of any behavior.
Maybe not perfectly, but
No,
you
there
know.
is no perfectly, because there is, excuse me, always chance and hazard in the universe.
Yes.
The horseshoe can always fly off the horse. The next thing that is built here is objective conscience. Gurdjieff talks about objective conscience, and most people pass right over it. Objective conscience is truly being able to experience the other as subject and behaving towards the other as subject, not as object. This is the thing that makes us human. And without it, you're not truly a human being. And that happens here. And the third thing that happens here is developing what we call in English, loving kindness towards all creatures. And it comes out of conscience. When you can connect to everything in the universe as subject, then your tendency is to act kindly towards them. You know, if you understand that that fly is a living, breathing, sentient being at some level, you don't pull its wings off. Children pull wings off flies, adults don't. And I mean, you'll see both Noor and I like catching a spider that has come into the house and taking it outside and putting it down because we're happy for it to live. And that's a very small example. Out of those three things comes a sense of objective ethics, a way to live your life that is not in line with any given book of laws, but is in line with the laws of the universe. And it can look differently in different ways for different people, but there is a consistency to it in my experience.
And it tends to enrich a sense of autonomy, not only for you, but for the people and all of the, the beings, the subjects around you with, a richer sense of autonomy of their own.
Yes, and the A word is very important here. Children need parental figures. Adults are autonomous. Nora, what was I think it was the very first meditative phrase I gave you?
Yeah, I do not defer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Children
Yeah.
defer to adults. Adults do not defer to anyone. Adults cooperate.
Yeah, this is not to negate any kind of need or desire for interdependence, which is kind of crucial to existence anyway, right? On the other hand, there's a sense of able to hold your own, to respect your own need and desire for space and
your own experience.
mhm.
The number of times that I've had somebody say to me something to the effect of, hey, you said this, but Swami What's-His-Nanda says that it's like this. And my reaction is always, so? I do not defer to Swami What's-His-Nanda.
Also does not have to defer to you.
No. But if you expect me to, you are terribly mistaken. Adult human beings do not defer. But because they have objective ethics, it is safe for them to be around. Children who end up in a place of not deferring becomes psychopaths because they have no connection to the other as inwardness. Now, from 3 to 5, you have used up most of your energy, most of the stored energy to do this. 6 is busting out of the chrysalis. And it is the hardest thing to do because you have to be incredibly efficient with the energy that you have left. This is why the practice is self-witnessing, because that is the reconciling practice. Self-observation is the affirming. Self-remembering is the denying. Self-witnessing is the reconciling practice. And it requires the least amount of energy to do. And there is grace at this point. There is the wind that comes and shakes the branch to help you move around and bust out of the chrysalis. So that's why this phase, the phase of moving from childhood, the larval state, as old Timothy Leary used to call it, into the chrysalis state in order to mature yourself to the point where you can emerge as an adult. And by the time you've done this, you have used up all of the stored energy that you've created in point 1 and 2, which is where you create the energy through your practice. Not to say that you don't get a little bit coming in, but by and large, this is done on your reserves. And if you don't have enough reserves, it's hard to get through this. Below a certain level, you don't get through it, which is sad, in which case you have to recycle back and do it again, which is a good thing for us that butterflies don't have. And it sucks if you tear away your cocoon and you look down and you're still a caterpillar. That would ruin my day. So does this make sense so far?
So we have a comment from Benjamin,
Yes, please.
a quote, really. I am thou, thou art I. He is ours, we both are his. So may all be for our neighbor.
Yeah, that sounds pretty much exactly right. That is the sense of an adult response to the other.
I see you unmuted. Did you want to share more thoughts?
Yeah, say stuff.
I was only going to add that if I remember correctly, this was the prayer which Gurdjieff received from his father. And I posted it exactly in response to what you were saying about objective conscience and the response to the other.
Yeah, and it's kind of perfect, actually. So thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the image here so that we can look at each other and talk and ask things and answer things. And I'm going to ask Wael, what do you think?
I think it's a brilliant extension from the talks that I've attended on this particular topic, which is very important for me. The part where you mentioned that certain leadership are actually children, whether it's leadership in a corporate boardroom, where tantrums are very often seen quite clearly, or whether it's on a military scale. I'm also intrigued by how a lot of Sufi poetry, particularly Rumi and Kabir, always do touch upon the concept of die before you die. And I was hoping to ask you to maybe clarify a little bit of what we mean by die before we die. I have a sense of it, but if you could just explain it maybe in a different way, that might be helpful for me.
Okay. I have two thoughts on that. One is the die before you die is the ego death. It is the place where it's hard to describe because your ego doesn't die, but the conditioning that impels the ego to control your life is given up. And the ego is put in its proper place, which is to monitor your life to keep you safe. Ego's job is to drive the car. Ego's job is to keep you from stepping out in traffic.
Kind of touches on your comment on the forum, Benjamin, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you describe it? We have problems with ego because ego is asleep. You, whoever that is behind your eyes, is never asleep, but it identifies with the sleep of the ego, the sleep of the machine. And when you are identified with the sleep of the machine, you yourself think you're asleep. You behave as if you were asleep. When the machine awakens, rather than being a noisy, crazy monkey jumping around inside your head, it becomes still. And that's the die before you die. You have to die to the dream to wake up to the reality.
Mushtaq, not to interrupt your chain of thoughts, but
No, go for it.
Is it sort of like in the Matrix, the first one, where Neo gets zapped out of the dream, the illusion, the system, and is now awake to the reality outside. With that in the story term,
Yeah, that's very
an
close
example of
to
him
what we're talking
dying.
about. Yeah.
Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, it doesn't always happen like that, but sometimes it really does feel like, holy shit, everything's different now.
Yeah. And the number of times that I have felt walking down the street that I was in that thing in the matrix where everybody around me was a program is, I've lost count. And then every now and again, you see the woman in the red dress. Ah. Now, my other thought is because while you work with children, you are creating some of that catalytic energy for them just by your presence, by how you act in class, by how you, by your own level of ethics, you demonstrate to them what an adult looks like, which is something that they're not getting in many places. So in that sense, your work is very, very, very important. It's not just martial arts daycare.
Thank
Take
you
it
for
to,
that.
yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That really helps me. Thank you.
Good. Other thoughts and questions?
I would look at the tarots sometimes this last few years, you know, with my art and trying to create this journey, this the hero's journey, the fool's journey, and you see the actual stages and the likes of the strength card, observant, you know, self-observation, and then even when you get to the hanged man and and on the death and temperance, and you know, it's so interesting because you can see it there in the Enneagram as well. And
Yep.
I think I wrote it that I was for the last couple of years I've been looking at, I don't know, Morris Nicole's work,
Yeah.
psychological commentaries, and I think they're just fantastic. And it's a way, like I wouldn't have been able to really grasp this talk today only for reading them books. And no, it's just with the Enneagram, it's something I'm really going to actually get really interested in and study now. It's a great, you know, it's great to see it on a system like that, you know. So
Yeah, it helps me organize everything. You know, Gurdjieff said that the Enneagram is the universal hieroglyphic, and I took him seriously on that and have tried to use it like that ever since. And so far in this channel, we have only touched the surface of it using one process that you can do on the Enneagram. And when I think about what else is there for us, it's intimidating in some ways how much information can be found. But there is a profound connection between the Enneagram and the Tarot. I don't know if you've watched it yet, but I did a whole video on.
Yeah, we did a talk on where the overlaps are and how it can be mapped out. Yeah.
I actually only discovered your channel like about maybe 3 weeks ago. So I'm like, I have a lot of catching up to be doing, you know. So, but I'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Like
I
I've
would
actually got books. Sorry. I've got books on there on the Enneagram and the Tarot as well. So that'll be my homework for a while.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I would be very interested in your take on that video when you
Oh,
watch it.
brilliant. I'll have to get to it. Well, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, because I mean, you're going fresh into your studies, so it'll be interesting what that inspires for you. And if you're feeling up for it, you can bring what you get out of it to the forum and share it with everyone.
Yeah, and we are in the process of writing a book on the Tarot and the Enneagram with our own deck of cards. We have a wonderful young artist who we commissioned to do the cards for us. And
Yep. Shout out to Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay. She's doing a great job. We're doing an okay job, but taking too long.
Yep.
Yeah. So one day that will be out. Signed copies available. Nancy,
That'll be fun.
what do you
Nancy.
think?
I think it's good, and I think I'm possibly in the process because I've recently become better at making decisions. And, I haven't yet begun to address just how much that opens up.
Yeah, I would
That's
say that,
exciting.
yeah, I would say that you're in the process. You've been working long enough to get there, and you've been working hard enough to get there. And yeah, so sure.
Yeah, and you've been quite helpful, but mostly by pushing me to make, you sort of throw me back on myself when I'm asking for advice some of the time.
Yeah, he's set that bridge on fire, I guess.
Excuse me?
He's set that rickety rope bridge on fire for you sometimes, I think.
Well, maybe like a little bit of embers going through it at this stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. Adults don't need a father figure to tell them what to do. That is such a toxic position to be in if you are in this work, finding big daddy or big mommy who will tell you what to think and how to behave. Nor has my permission to shoot me if she ever catches me doing that, because it would be better for everybody.
Yeah, and I have to watch out for myself too, if I start feeling like I need approval and all that stuff, that's a clue to me that I need to tune back into my own intuition and intellect and experience and self-discipline and courage too.
Yeah,
Important.
another couple things. One is that there's a person in my life who I think is trying to use me as an example adult or something.
Ah, interesting.
It's kind of unnerving to get that level of respect. At least it is for me.
It can
Well, I
also
think
be
it is
part
for
of
everybody.
your learning, your path, in terms of your working towards emerging into confident adulthood to some extent. The student almost always becomes the teacher in one form or another.
Yeah, well, part of it is she's up against some stuff that strikes me as pretty serious that I do not fully understand. And that's kind of spooky.
Well, part of this may be knowing where you can help and where you can't, and being kind but clear with her about that.
Yeah, I think I may send a message to her about how, she's giving me this respect and there's a limit to how much I know.
Of course,
Yeah,
that goes for all of us.
yeah, I can tell you from personal experience that no matter how many times you get it, it's a little bit terrifying to have that level of respect from people, because it means you really have to live up to it.
Yeah, and this overlaps something I was wondering about as probably a feature of adulthood, which is being not perfect, but reasonably clear about what one can do and what one can't do.
Reasonably clear is a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just that I think people have a strong tendency to take either too much or too little responsibility.
Yep. To under or overestimate their capacity too.
Mhm.
We have a couple of things to address here.
Yes.
Benjamin made a recommendation.
An essay.
Yeah, and I can tell you that he's exactly right. This is a beautiful essay.
I want to read the comments so that people who can't read this, and we won't be able to read it because we'll lose the chat after.
Yeah.
Here is a short essay written by Annie Lou Staveley, a student of Mr. Gurdjieff and Jane Heap. It's entitled Aim and Wish, and I feel it especially relates to today's topic. And I suppose we can post a link to that in the forum.
Yeah, we will. And we don't actually lose the chat.
Okay, well, I mean, we don't post it. So.
Yeah, we don't post it. But yeah, we'll post the link to this in the forum. For those of you who don't know Jane Heap, she was one of a group of women known as the Women of the Rope, or the Ladies of the Rope. who Gurdjieff worked with extensively and privately away from his other group. And all of them are brilliant. And I suspect he taught them things that he didn't teach the rest of their students. I find them fascinating because most of them did work that changed the world in interesting ways. Two of the women of the rope created what was called the Little Review, which they were the first people to publish James Joyce in America and got into lots of trouble for it. So anyway, yes, read this essay. It's very, very good.
All right, I've saved the link. Okay, so Lavita offers a thought in reflection on what Nancy was sharing, that level of respect is also a temptation to our ego. We may start to think we deserve that level of respect. Well, I mean, wisdom is entitled to a certain amount of, not obeisance, but just kind of appreciation, right? So we keep that in mind.
You may deserve that level of respect, but it does not mean that you deserve deference.
Yes, that's key.
Yes. And I've known a number of people who started out really, really well and ended up being culty because they thought that they should have deference. And with deference comes the inability to question.
Yeah, and there are some cultural baggages tied up in that too.
Yeah. And if it goes completely wrong, then you become the parental figure. And the people who you're working with never grow up.
And it defeats the purpose.
Yeah. We also have
and then we have a question, yes. Jacopo asks, how does a human adult deal with chaos, with not knowing what to do and feeling vulnerable?
The short answer is you surf the chaos. I mean, I don't mean to be trite, but chaos is inherent in the world. And you have to be able to be the still point at the center. If I'm finding chaos around me, I look for the strange attractor. The strange attractor is the point around which the chaos spins. And then I step into that place. If I am in the place around which the chaos spins, I have a certain amount of, if not control, ability to deal. So an adult is comfortable with chaos because it is an inherent part of the universe. Not knowing what to do means that you can do anything.
But this is why we yammer on about breath practice all the time, because it allows you to hold that center and be at peace with it while crazy shit goes on around you and you just kind of
and feeling
cruise with it.
Feeling vulnerable is something we have to deal with for our entire lives. I don't care how enlightened somebody's supposed to be. If they are a real human being, they will feel vulnerable because your inwardness is out there. And
if you're checked out, you might not feel vulnerable, but then are you really living your life? Are you really present? I tend to suspect not.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts? I might poke at people. Is it that time?
Yeah,
I should get on that because we gotta wrap up shortly.
Yeah.
Malou, how are you doing? What are you thinking about?
Not much. I'm just following right now.
Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Do you have any answers?
Nope.
Give me an answer and I'll give you a question to go with it.
I just said flies.
Yeah. I see that.
Reminds me of that John Lennon poem, No Flies on Frank. I
She
just
has all of
really
these-
dated myself there.
Yeah, Malou has all these subjects, these subjectivities that are bothering her right now. They need to respect her autonomy because she's going to hit them. Yeah. How about you, Levita?
Is Levita still speaking?
I'm gonna have to watch. I'm gonna have to watch this video again because listening to you explain the Enneagram around the circles in my head, I'm going, that explains a bunch of stuff I've seen over the past 2 years. It explains some things I've personally experienced internally. So I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I think this stuff might actually have some usefulness.
Yay!
God, I love it when that happens.
That's what we hope for. Maybe
Yes,
our effort
yes.
is worth it somehow. Thank you, Levita.
Yeah.
Excellent.
David,
Hello.
what's new?
Not much. I've been thinking about creating wholeness at 0.6 and out of the fragmented eyes and what that might look like or feel like inside.
And what do you think about that?
I'm exploring it, trying to figure out where I might be not quite doing that, or maybe not observing as well as I could.
Okay.
Good stuff to work with, though. That's juicy stuff. Good. Awesome, David. How about Jonathan?
Yeah, Jonathan's been very quiet today.
Even though he has his awesome new mic.
Yeah, okay, I better test it out.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, as someone who is on the path towards human adulthood, it's not really possible for me to model myself on a human adult. Well, let's say, I might say, oh, well, Mushtaq, claims to be a human adult.
Oh, no,
should I model myself on him? And I'm like, no, you have your outer characteristics. My human adulthood, it's not going to resemble your outer characteristics.
I certainly hope not.
No, but maybe your inner state might be something much similar to what my human adulthood might be.
That would probably be absolutely correct. And this is why I keep pointing out the elements that it takes to be an adult, to be an objective adult.
Because those things are shared.
Yes.
And it's interesting because they're shared, it does enable a certain sense of deepened, improved, clearer sense of communication where you're not stepping on each other. As I said, you're enriching each other's autonomy. And so it helps when you have two adults working together because that becomes so much more naturally done.
I wish we could continue on with this, but
yes,
I have
unfortunately, Mushtaq has another engagement.
10 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yep.
And
If we didn't get to hear from you, I'm sorry.
but that's what the forum is for.
Mostly we heard from everyone either via chat or, you know, on camera. So thank you so much, everyone. I guess we can go into Brady Bunch mode.
We can.
Oh, Aaron, though. Aaron, damn it. You can talk to us later. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here. We are so happy to spend this time with you. And if you're able to join us later, that would be most excellent. But if not, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, however much is left for you.
And we apologize for having to cut this off so quickly.
Yep. But that shouldn't be a thing for any other time. All right, let's wave to each other and everyone watching on YouTube, and take care, everyone.